For centuries, the popular imagination has framed 14th century warfare as a pageant of honor and noble duels. Edward of Woodstock, known to history as the Black Prince, stands as the ultimate symbol of this chivalric ideal. This romantic facade hides a stark operational reality. In the mid-1300s, England was a smaller, poorer nation facing the massive demographic and economic weight of the French crown. Defeating a superior continental force required the English to discard the rules of honorable engagement in favor of strict mathematical pragmatism. Edward's true mastery was systematic, state-directed economic sabotage and widespread civilian slaughter. His legacy is built entirely on asymmetric economic warfare and industrialized battlefield lethality. The core of this English operational doctrine was the Chevauchée. A chevauchée is a rapid, mounted military raid designed to destroy enemy territory rather than conquering. This map illustrates the 1346 and 1355 campaigns. English forces launched massive incursions deep into the French interior, explicitly maneuvering around major stone fortresses to avoid sieges. Instead, they targeted wealthy, undefended agricultural basins like Poitou and Languedoc to burn crops and kill the peasantry. The primary economic goal was to starve the French war treasury. By annihilating regional productivity, the English directly eliminated the French king's tax base. This carried a severe psychological component. It destroyed the political credibility of the French crown by proving to the populace that their monarch could not protect them. The resulting social collapse triggered massive refugee crises. Fleeing peasants flooded walled cities like Paris and Toulouse, instantly draining local food stores and defenses. This flowchart shows the strategic feedback loop. Economic destruction created insurmountable political pressure, which forced the French military into rushed mobilizations and reactionary pursuits. The chevauchée was a highly calculated system designed to force a numerically superior French army to fight on unfavorable, defensive English terms. This strategy culminated at the Battle of Crécy in August 1346, when a frustrated and exhausted French army finally cornered the English raiders. A sudden severe rainstorm broke over the field just before the engagement, turning the hillside into a mire of thick, exhausting mud. This weather, combined with poor logistics, immediately neutralized the French vanguard of Genoese mercenary crossbowmen. They were forced to advance without their pavises. A pavis is a large, freestanding shield designed to protect a crossbowman while they reload. This diagram compares the mechanical output of the two forces. A trained Genoese crossbowman could shoot approximately 2 rounds per minute, while an English longbowman could loose up to 10. As seen in this array, the English longbow utilized heavy, narrow Bodkin Point arrowheads. A Bodkin Point is a rigid, armor-piercing spike engineered to defeat chainmail and penetrate plate armor at ranges up to 80 meters. The English deployed an estimated 5,000 archers along their flanks, creating dense, overlapping, inescapable fields of fire across the muddy slope. This resulted in an industrialized volume of fire. Historians estimate that the English launched over 500,000 arrows during the engagement. The Genoese mercenaries were mathematically overwhelmed, unable to match the firing rate. Lacking defensive cover, they were rapidly slaughtered and routed from the field. The opening phase at Crécy was a cold execution of fire superiority that mathematically negated the French vanguard. In a disastrous command response to the failing vanguard, the French leadership ordered their elite heavy cavalry to charge directly through their own retreating mercenaries. This schematic illustrates the English position's tactical geometry. Natural terrain anchored their flanks, funneling the French charge into a central kill zone. The English held the high ground, forcing horses to charge uphill through mud and defensive pits, rapidly draining their forward momentum. The fleeing Genoese mercenaries added absolute chaos to the advance, acting as a living physical barrier the armored knights had to hack their way through. Simultaneously, the English archers directed continuous flanking fire at the unarmored French warhorses. This caused mass casualties, forced dismounts, and sent wounded horses fleeing in blind panic. The final barrier was the English anvil. This consisted of dismounted men-at-arms forming a static, impenetrable block of infantry spears. We can define the physics of this impact cleanly.
As the French cavalry reached the English lines, their kinetic energy had been reduced to zero.
The resulting engagement collapsed into a prolonged, static slaughter, where unhorsed knights were trampled and suffocated in the mud. The French nobility stubbornly refused to yield, launching repeated, disorganized, and entirely futile charges late into the pitch-black night. This manuscript illumination shows how the Black Prince successfully repeated this exact defensive doctrine of restricting terrain, massed archers, and dismounted infantry 10 years later at Poitiers in 1356. The English defensive system mathematically dismantled the kinetic mass of the French heavy cavalry, turning the era's ultimate weapon into a fatal liability. The physical aftermath of the Battle of Crécy reveals the sheer, staggering density of destruction left in the mud. The casualty data was highly asymmetrical. Over 1,500 French noblemen and thousands of common infantry were killed. This chart visualizes the staggering loss of the French aristocracy against the English casualties. English deaths are estimated at a mere 40 to 300 men. The macro-strategic result of these battles and the prolonged chevauchées was the absolute financial bankruptcy of the French crown. This brutal operational doctrine secured English territorial holdings and military dominance in France for over a century. We must strip away the chivalric romance and noble mythology traditionally associated with the 100 Years' War. Edward the Black Prince was not a romantic hero. He was a ruthless, highly effective systems engineer of economic devastation and human destruction. True medieval military supremacy belonged to those willing to fully industrialize slaughter.